Hello, everyone. Good evening to you all. Welcome to Carrow Road, the resumption of football following the death of the Queen, of course, and with the country still in a period of mourning. But it was lovely to have football back. We had an impeccably observed minute's silence before the singing of the national anthem or before kickoff this evening here against Bristol City. And due respect was paid to all that, as I think you would all expect. So, on terms of the football, on the background of that, because it's obviously been quite a surreal few days, Norwich made it 6 wins out of 6 in the league, I think, somehow. Quite a curious game of football. Really interesting game of football, really fun game of football. Not the sort of game you take away and use as a precedent example of Norwich's approaches to games or anything like that, because there were lots of flaws. And I suppose the resounding element to take away from tonight is that they were always in control in terms of the scoreboard, if not in terms of what was going on the pitch. You know, in those periods where you thought it might get away from them, they were still ahead. And I've watched Norwich a lot at all levels, where they have been in that situation of just looking completely second best, and they're drawing, and you know they're not going to find a way of winning it. And it might well happen this season that we get into moments where Norwich are behind and have to scrape an equaliser, or they're level but they might lose. So to be in the situation tonight where they were ahead and going to, you know, see that out somehow without any control was okay. It was good. They in that element and in that essence, they did do enough tonight. But it wasn't a great performance, and I think a lot of that owes to Bristol City for several reasons. I would say I thought from the first moment they set up very aggressively. When Norwich were playing out from the back, when Norwich had it in their own final third, Bristol City pressed them. They were willing to leave themselves relatively short at the back to have the bodies in midfield, and especially in their own attacking line, to press Norwich really hard. And actually, although you can look at it and say Norwich were sloppy in possession, and they gave the ball away, there were loose passes when they weren't under a lot of pressure, they also were spending a fair amount of time under pressure or outnumbered in midfield, or when they were trying to play out. So Bristol City made that really awkward for them, and they got some joy. They won some great opportunities. They had the first real opportunity of the game. You know, they caused Norwich loads of issues, and actually the way they set up and the way they went for it and their attack threat is by some distance the best I've seen against Norwich so far this season. So credit to Bristol City, because I think if you're watching that every week, you know, you probably know it's going to be lively, and I'm sure, like at any football club, there'll be issues supporters have with what's going on and what things are happening. But Nigel Pearson is doing a really good job there, because it has been desperate under him, 1-2 years ago. So he looks like he's got something that's a lot more coherent. The flip side, though, or the expense of what he was trying to do across the pitch, which did keep the game competitive all the way through, was that they were incredibly open at the back. And, you know, Norwich had so many chances to put the game out of sight. Some teams will come unstuck against that. But Norwich have got enough quality in their forward line that they are going to score goals. And that's probably why, although it was a bit harum-scarum and a little bit weird and chaotic, in terms of the scoreboard situation, I suppose even had Bristol City have got level, you wouldn't have been surprised if Norwich had suddenly had a great opportunity to go and make it, you know, go and restore their lead, for example. So there's an element of that. But, you know, the sloppiness, the lack of control in midfield, and, you know, the goals they conceded, and just the general performance level. And I kind of agree with Dean Smith, and he said that, you know, Norwich went 2-0 up, and I felt this, I think I tweeted it as well. Norwich went 2-0 up, and then it was like, well, we're not even playing that well, and we're 2-0 up, happy days. And then their level dropped. And I think, as often happens in a game of football, you struggle to you can't really reclaim it once you've lost it. It's very hard to get going again. I was quite surprised he didn't make any sort of shape tweaks. He didn't make any personnel tweaks at halftime, which didn't surprise me, but I thought he may have tweaked a bit. It looked quite similar, and it, you know, continued in a similar vein. Then he did change the personnel, but didn't change the shape. But there was a bit more energy in that at that point, until a really weird goal that got Bristol City back into it. Teemu Pukki is a marvel. He has now got 80 goals, I think. No, 81, isn't it? He got 2 goals tonight. That takes him into 5th, I think, in Norwich's all-time goal-scoring list. And had a really interesting chat with him after the game. I suppose there's a possibility those quotes will end up somewhere else before I get to use them, but that is the way it works. But I suspect I will manage to put that together in an athletic article, which will obviously be hopefully a good read for you all, and that will be with you in the morning of Thursday. So look out for that. But a wonderful guy who continues to excel at this football club, and I think everyone knows that at this level in the Championship, he just is really clinical in those moments. You can rely on him, and the fact he gave Norwich a 2-goal lead after just 24 minutes, as I said, was kind of flattering, but it was owed a lot to his own movement. He made those opportunities look so easy because of the striker he is and because of how clever he is with his movement. He made those opportunities. Very well fed from Aaron Ramsey for the second goal. And the first one, he did really well with himself with a little flick up and then a header. But again, pretty atrocious open defending from Bristol City for both. They did really well to get a goal back and worked it hard and worked it well with that. Then Norwich scored from a corner in the second half. You think 3-1, that should be fine. There is a foul on Max Aarons in the build-up. I would say play should have stopped. It wasn't. Marcelino Nunez probably thought it should have been stopped because he was dawdling in the box. He got robbed by Williamson, who'd just come on, and then Semenyo rifled the ball home to finish the job, and that was 3-2. And Bristol City had opportunities and moments and pressure, but Norwich had some incredible opportunities on the break. And actually, sometimes you can assess it to say how many times did Tim Krul really get tested in goal? Did he have to really make a top-class save? Actually, not that many. So, but maybe that was not. And Norwich had some great opportunities and probably didn't make Dan Bentley work that hard himself. But there were a few blocks in there from both sides, and it was an open game in lots of ways, and that's why it was quite fun. Bristol City, I think, on that evidence, I think they'll be pressing the playoffs pretty hard for the rest of the season. Will be very interesting to see what West Brom look like here on Saturday. They are having a really difficult start now, it looks like. They lost again at home in a Midlands derby, and Steve Bruce is going to be under some pressure. I assume he'll still be in charge when we get to here and we get to Saturday, but stranger things have happened. So that will be a very interesting case on Saturday, because they were kind of the potential worst case scenario for Norwich, mid-table in the Premier League relegation. West Brom, that's what they achieved last season, and they haven't really achieved much more this year so far. So they've only won once, I think, so far this season. So that will be interesting. A couple of points that are worth bearing in mind tonight are things such as the fact that Grant Hanley had to come off with a shoulder complaint, and it was a complaint on his shoulder that follows on from the shoulder injury he had last season, which, of course, as a recurrence and something like that, because shoulders can be quite awkward, I would say is slightly worrying. Hopefully it's just a more concern that is fine and sort itself out. But of course, there's a quick turnaround because Norwich are playing again on Saturday. No Angus Gunn in the squad today. He felt his knee. That's had an injection. We'll get scanned and we'll check. Michael McGovern was on the bench, and Tim Krul's looking in decent form. So there's no major issues there, but it is what it is in regards to that. Sam Byram seemed to be feeling his leg at one point later on in the game, but hopefully he'll be okay. And obviously Todd Cantwell was okay after his knock, and I don't think there's anything else really to say. Josh Sargent's header was good from the corner, and Anel Hernandez came on, and Gabriel Sara did well. But actually, both did well when they came on. I thought they positively impacted the game, so that was good. I thought Marcelo Nunez, apart from the goal, had a better second half. It did kind of follow in the trend of a slightly erratic performance. He's sort of a bit erratic at the moment. You can see all the good stuff, but you can see where he's sort of coming up short a little bit. And that midfield was a bit of a worry tonight. They'll need to make sure that's better come Saturday's game. And yeah, the only other thing I really wanted to shout out for was Todd Cantwell, because I thought he was a little bit unlucky to come off, and I thought he did work really hard, especially in the second half when not many of his teammates were really getting going. I thought he was the one, and obviously there's an element of wanting to be seen to do it, but I did think he put the yards in, and it was a little bit unfortunate on him to be the one to come off, because I thought he put that effort in. Anyone else could have come off as well. So I just thought Todd deserved a bit of a shout out for that. Yeah, so obviously a great day, a great couple of days for Norwich City. I bear in mind, of course, the situation we're all in terms of what's going on in the world outside of Norwich City, and the national period of mourning that is going on. But in terms of Norwich City bubble, we have the announcement Norwich City that the deal is done, which I'm not entirely convinced it's actually absolutely done, but I think it sort of, if you imagine the bit where you exchange on a house rather than complete it, I think we're sort of in that limbo there. But anyway, it's yes, Mark Atanasio is the Norwich City director. He's part of the club. How that factors into the future of the football club, we shall all wait and see with bated breath. It will be fascinating to see how it all resolves. The best thing I could say to you is definitely worth watching the interviews with Mark Atanasio and Delia and Michael that the club have put out. I think the last time any official at the football club, I'm willing to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I think the last time any official from Norwich City other than Dean Smith spoke to an external media properly about football, so not like a podcast that included extra activities beyond football. I think the last time anyone spoke to anyone outside of the club as an interview would have been the AGM last year, which I think was just after Dean Smith's appointment. So that's the last time anyone got to ask them a question. But, not for the want of asking, obviously. Delia Smith, Michael Wynne-Jones, and then Mark Atanasio in a separate video. They are worth watching because you get to hear their viewpoints and you can always read between the lines, I find. So do that. But then to kind of know a lot more about what is actually going on, because there's not many details, there is a piece on The Athletic, which I've been working on since April. It's got as many details as possible in it, and hopefully it answers a lot of questions in terms of what the mechanics have been, what it was like when the whole process began and went through, and a little bit of looking ahead. But there are a lot of questions we don't know the answer to yet, and I myself, in my role, will be very interested and keeping an eye on how some of those things resolve themselves, both over the coming weeks, months, and potentially years. Could be interesting. So yeah, read that. That is on The Athletic. I think we're done here. Nice to have football back. Hope you enjoyed it. Hey, Norwich won. That's the most important thing. There was a period tonight where I looked at the game and I thought, Norwich are playing against a team here who have had a difficult couple of years and look like they've got a bit of a plan of what they're doing. They feel good about themselves and they look quite hungry. Have Norwich, as well as the quality, championship quality, and as well as the money from parachute payments, have they also got the hunger? Well, yeah, they dug in and they saw it out tonight. And I've got through a whole 13 and a half minutes without mentioning the referee, which I think is remarkable. All I will say on that is there was a corner shout down here that everyone got very angry about. It wasn't a corner. It was a goal kick because it came back off Anel Hernandez. But the goal I thought was poor. I thought that should have been a foul on Aaron's, especially as the referee then did give a very similar foul, if not softer one, to Bristol City in the build-up to one of their attacks about 2 minutes later. And then the final whistle was probably the most hilarious end to a football match I've ever known, because to wait until the very moment Gabriel Sara played the through ball that looked like Norwich would go and score a fourth, to wait for that moment to blow for full time, you have to be very special. You have to want that. You have to want that moment. And I think the way the last 10 minutes was going, Mr. Webb wanted that moment. And like with every refereeing performance where I know how hard the job is, and I thought he was actually fine until the goal. I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong. It was all good. You always, store their performances. You know when they've had good ones. You'll know when they've had bad ones. And we'll know when Mr. Webb is refereeing again. Right. Job done. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy yourselves. Take care of each other, and I will see you back down here on Saturday for another game of football. Let's get rid of that. When West Brom are the visitors to the Carrow Road Hyper Bowl. It should be great fun. Look forward to it. Until then, Auf Wiedersehen.